Retaliatory attacks took place in the early morning of October 27th, shortly after the Pentagon announced that 19 U.S. military personnel stationed in Iraq and Syria had suffered traumatic brain injuries in a series of missile and drone attacks believed to be backed by Iran the previous week. Self-defense response. On October 27th, the U.S. conducted 2 airstrikes targeting bases of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and their proxy forces in eastern Syria as a response to a series of recent missile and drone attacks aimed at U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. The F-16 fighter jets targeted weapon storage facilities and ammunition depots, sending a strong signal to Iran to deter the attacks that the Pentagon blamed on Tehran's proxy forces in Syria and Iraq. Although the number of targets was limited, it reflected an escalation in the facilities used by Iran's forces in the region. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III stated in a press release, "These precise self-defense attacks were in response to a series of attacks by Iranian-backed militia groups against U.S. military personnel in Iraq and Syria, most of which were unsuccessful." Austin added, "The United States does not seek conflict, has no intention or desire to engage in further hostile actions, but attacks backed by Iran against U.S. forces are unacceptable and must cease." Since the surprise attack by Hamas on Israel on October 7th, President Biden and his advisors have been seeking to de-escalate the conflict between Israel and Hamas and prevent it from spreading regionally, involving Iran and their proxy forces in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. To achieve this goal, the U.S. deployed 2 aircraft carriers to the eastern Mediterranean near Israel and additional fighter jets to the Persian Gulf region to deter Iran and their proxy forces in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq from escalating the regional conflict. The Pentagon also moved additional Patriot missile batteries and air defense systems to several Gulf countries to protect U.S. military and bases in the region. However, with almost daily attacks on U.S. forces over the past 10 days, the pressure has increased to respond militarily, according to the Pentagon. Austin noted, "These attacks in this narrow scope are intended to protect U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria." He added, "They are separate and distinct from the conflict ongoing between Israel and Hamas, and do not change our approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict." He further stated, "If attacks by Iranian-backed militia groups against U.S. military personnel continue, we will not hesitate to take further necessary measures to protect our people." Retaliation message. A senior U.S. Department of Defense official responded to the press, stating that the airstrikes were not coordinated with the Israeli military. The details provided by the Pentagon about these attacks are as follows. 2 U.S. Air Force F-16 fighter jets based in the region, along with an MQ-9 unmanned aircraft, dropped over 30 precision-guided bombs on a weapons storage facility and ammunition depot near Abu Kamal, Syria. Although missiles or unmanned aircraft had not been launched from this location, the ammunition and weapons stored there were used in previous attacks against U.S. forces. The Pentagon reported that at the time of the attack, there were people present at the site, but it has not been determined whether anyone was injured or killed in the attacks. Similar to previous actions, the U.S. targeted facilities in eastern Syria that were supported by Iran rather than the southern part of Iraq, where these groups operate more broadly. The U.S. has called on Iraqi officials to crack down on these groups, but with limited success. However, U.S. airstrikes may disrupt the Iraqi government, which has a close cooperation with the U.S. government. Mick Mulroy, a former senior defense official and retired CIA officer, said in a statement on the evening of October 27th, "We sent a message tonight. We will respond directly to Iran, especially the IRGC, if they continue to attack our military positions and personnel in Iraq and Syria." On October 25th, when asked about the recent drone attacks against U.S. military personnel in Iraq and Syria, President Biden warned Iran that if they continue to act against these troops, we will respond. The U.S. Department of Defense previously stated that 21 military personnel were injured, but returned to duty after the attacks on October 17th and 18 at Al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq and Al-Tanf Garrison in southern Syria. According to Pentagon spokesperson Patrick S. Ryder, on October 26th, 15 of the 17 military personnel injured at Al-Tanf and all 4 of the injured soldiers at Al-Assad were later diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries. Ryder said, "In some cases, several days after the attack, troops reported tinnitus and headaches. There are 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq and 900 in Syria, primarily assisting local allies in counterterrorism efforts against the Islamic State. In June 2021, the U.S. conducted airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against 2 Iran-backed militia groups that the Pentagon believed were responsible for drone attacks on U.S. personnel in Iraq. In August 2022, the U.S. targeted militant groups linked to the IRGC in northeastern Syria, resulting in at least 2 deaths. These attacks followed missile attacks believed to be backed by Iran that injured 3 U.S. military personnel. In March 2023, U.S. intelligence agencies concluded that an Iranian-origin self-destructing drone killed 1 American contractor and injured another contractor and 5 U.S. military personnel in an attack on a maintenance facility at a joint base in northeastern Syria. The Pentagon retaliated by conducting airstrikes on facilities in eastern Syria associated with groups linked to the IRGC rather than Iranian military forces. In response to the press, Reuters stated that the U.S. has the right to self-defense, saying, "When a decision is made to respond, we will do so at a time and place of our choosing." This incident occurred in the early hours of Friday, October 27th, in eastern Syria.